The space station of Orin Prime buzzed with the frenetic energy of intergalactic travelers, merchants, and spies alike. Neon lights flickered overhead, casting a kaleidoscope of colors over the bustling crowd. Holographic advertisements for the latest technologies and exotic goods danced in the air, vying for the attention of every passerby. In the midst of this chaos, Kaela moved with purpose, her sharp green eyes scanning the environment with the keen awareness of a predator. She wore a fitted black jumpsuit that accentuated her athletic form, a tool of both disguise and utility. As she approached the Galactic Intelligence Agency's secure chamber, her heart raced, not out of fear, but from the thrill of the mission that awaited her. The air around her hummed with the faint sounds of machinery and muted conversations, but she was focused solely on her objective. Kaela had received a message earlier that day, a brief communication that hinted at her next assignment. The Zynari Empire, a colossal and technologically advanced regime, had been developing weaponry that could tip the fragile balance of power in the galaxy. It was her job to infiltrate their ranks and gather the vital intelligence needed to thwart their ambitions. The chamber door hissed open, and she stepped inside, the sterile atmosphere contrasting sharply with the vibrant chaos outside. A figure clad in a sharp metallic blue uniform awaited her, a senior officer from Galactic Intelligence, known for his no-nonsense demeanor and sharp intellect. Commander Thorn looked up from his console as Kaela entered, his expression one of cautious approval. "Kaela," he greeted, his voice steady. "You're late." "I prefer to arrive fashionably," she quipped, a smirk playing at the corners of her lips. Thorn raised an eyebrow, his expression unchanging. "You're not here to entertain me. We have a situation." Kaela straightened, the playful banter replaced by the weight of reality. "What's the mission?" Thorn gestured to a holographic display hovering above the console. It flickered to life, revealing a detailed image of the Zynari Empire's military installations, surrounded by a network of their ships patrolling the outer regions. "We've intercepted communications suggesting they are on the verge of deploying a new class of weaponry. This technology could obliterate entire planets." Kaela leaned closer, her mind racing with possibilities. "And you want me to infiltrate them?" "Exactly. We need you to gain access to their inner circle. They're hosting a high-profile gala in a week. That's your best chance." Thorn paused, his gaze piercing. "You'll need to become one of them, understand their inner workings, and extract any information on these weapons." Kaela nodded, her heart thumping with the thrill of the challenge. "I can do it. What's my cover?" Thorn handed her a data pad. "You'll be posing as a diplomat from the Draxan Coalition. Your credentials are already in place. You'll need to study their culture and customs. They are known for their strict adherence to protocol." "And the leader of the Zynari Empire?" Kaela queried, her mind already crafting strategies. "Zephyr," Thorn replied, his tone laced with caution. "He's charismatic but dangerous. Do not underestimate him. He's a master manipulator and has eyes everywhere." Kaela smirked again, her confidence bubbling to the surface. "I'm used to dealing with dangerous men." As she left the chamber, the gravity of her mission settled over her like a shroud. She had successfully infiltrated high-security environments before, but the Zynari Empire was unlike anything she had encountered. Their technology was advanced, their defenses formidable. But Kaela thrived on challenges. They were her lifeblood. In her quarters aboard the station, she meticulously began her preparations. The walls of her room were lined with mirrors, reflecting the woman she had become after years of training and countless missions. She stood before them, her fingers brushing over various items that would aid her disguise, wigs of different colors, outfits that ranged from diplomatic elegance to alluring seduction. For this mission, she would need to blend seamlessly into the Zynari elite, and that meant reinventing herself yet again. As she selected a shimmering gown of deep crimson and tailored it to fit her frame, her mind wandered to her past missions. Flashbacks flickered through her thoughts. Each mission weighed heavily on her psyche, like a tapestry woven from the threads of betrayal, deception, and fleeting connections. She remembered the time she had infiltrated a criminal syndicate on the planet Vortex, where she had to gain the trust of a ruthless gang leader. The thrill of the chase had been intoxicating, but the night she had to betray him had left a bitter taste in her mouth. Kaela shook her head, dispelling the memories. She couldn't afford to linger on the past. It would only slow her down. As she finished dressing, she practiced her new persona in front of the mirrors. Her voice softened, adopting a lilting accent as she spoke lines she had rehearsed. "It is an honor to represent my coalition at such a prestigious event." The sound of the door chime interrupted her. She turned, smoothing down her gown, and opened the door to find a small package on the floor. Curiosity piqued. She bent down to retrieve it. Inside was a sleek, silver device, her new communication tool, designed to keep her connected with galactic intelligence while she was behind enemy lines. With a deep breath, Kaela slipped the device into her pocket, feeling the weight of her mission settle firmly on her shoulders. She was ready. As she made her way to her ship, the sleek craft awaited her, an unassuming vessel that had been modified for stealth. The interior was minimalistic yet efficient, equipped with everything she would need for her journey. With deft hands, she began the pre-launch checks, ensuring all systems were operational. Her heart raced with anticipation. But just as she completed her preparations, alarms blared throughout the station. The lights flickered ominously, and an urgent message blared over the intercom. All vessels, prepare for immediate lockdown. Zynari patrols have been sighted in the vicinity. Kaela's instincts kicked in. The Zynari were already onto her. She activated her ship's cloaking systems, the vessel merging with the shadows of the station as she prepped for takeoff. The thrumming of her heart matched the pulsing engines, a rhythm of adrenaline and determination. Time to put the act into play, she muttered to herself. With a final glance at the chaos erupting on the space station, she propelled her ship forward, bursting through the docking bay and into the vastness of space. But the moment she broke free, her sensors lit up with a warning of incoming Zynari patrol ships. They had been waiting, ready to intercept any potential threats to their empire. Her heart raced. This was not just a mission, it was a test of her skills, of her very survival. Kaela's mind raced as she plotted her next move. She could either engage the enemy or devise a clever ruse to escape. Her eyes narrowed as she made her decision. Let's give them a show. With a flick of her wrist, she initiated a series of visual and auditory distractions, holographic decoys that would mimic her ship's signature while she slipped through their defenses. The Zynari ships swarmed around her, attempting to close in, but Kaela's quick thinking and reflexes kept her one step ahead. Come on, she urged her ship as she weaved through the asteroids, using the debris as cover. The Zynari ships, caught off guard by the sudden chaos, began to clash with each other in their frantic attempts to pursue her. The thrill of the chase electrified her senses as she maneuvered expertly, slipping through narrow gaps and using the asteroids to her advantage. With every turn, she felt the weight of her mission pressing down on her, but she also felt the exhilarating freedom of the unknown. Finally, with one last calculated move, Kaela activated her ship's hyperdrive, the stars stretching into lines of light as she leaped into warp speed. She had done it. She had escaped the clutches of the Zynari patrols, but she knew this was only the beginning. The true danger lay ahead, waiting for her on the Zynari home planet. As her ship hurtled towards its destination, Kaela steeled herself for the challenge that awaited. The Zynari Empire was vast and complex, but she was ready to infiltrate their ranks, charm their leaders, and uncover the secrets that could save, or doom, the galaxy. The thrill of espionage coursed through her veins, and she smiled, anticipation bubbling within her. Kaela stepped into the grand hall of the Zynari Empire, her heart pounding in sync with the pulse of the extravagant gala surrounding her. The atmosphere was electric, a dazzling display of opulence that would make even the most seasoned spy pause. Chandeliers hung from the ceiling like enormous, glittering stars, casting a warm, golden glow over the meticulously arranged tables laden with exotic foods and fine wines. The laughter and chatter of the attendees filled the air, creating a symphony of sound that was both intoxicating and disorienting. She had donned the guise of a Zynari noblewoman, her shimmering gown flowing around her like liquid silver, accentuating her figure and drawing the eye of many. Kaela's long dark hair had been styled into intricate braids, adorned with sparkling jewels that caught the light with every movement. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, her keen eyes scanning for any hint of information that could aid her mission. As she mingled, Kaela felt the weight of her purpose pressing down on her. She was here to gather intelligence on the Zynari's advanced weaponry, and the stakes had never been higher. The Void Eraser, a weapon capable of annihilating entire planets, loomed like a dark cloud over her thoughts. She had to find out more, but the task felt increasingly daunting amidst the sea of unfamiliar faces. Lady Kaela, a smooth voice broke through her reverie. She turned to find herself face to face with Zephyr, the enigmatic leader of the Zynari Empire. He stood tall and imposing, his presence commanding attention even amid the gala's grandeur. His striking features were framed by dark, tousled hair, and his piercing blue eyes seemed to hold the secrets of the universe within them. "Zephyr," Kaela replied, her voice steady despite the flutter of her heart. "I didn't expect to see you here tonight." He smiled, a charming yet predatory grin that made her skin tingle. "I wouldn't miss a gathering of this importance. It's an opportunity to connect with allies and assess potential threats," he said, his gaze lingering on her, as if he were trying to decipher her very soul. Kaela knew she had to tread carefully. "And what do you see when you look at me?" she inquired, her tone a mix of curiosity and challenge. He stepped closer, the air between them thickening with an undeniable tension. "A woman of many mysteries," he replied, his voice low and enticing. "One who could be an invaluable ally, or a dangerous adversary." Kaela felt a shiver run down her spine. She was acutely aware of how easily she could get lost in his charisma, how his words could weave a spell that might ensnare even the most resolute of hearts. "I assure you, I'm here only for the festivities," she said, forcing herself to maintain eye contact, to project confidence. But there's always more at play than meets the eye," Zephyr mused, his expression thoughtful. "I've seen many come and go, but few can truly navigate the currents of power as you seem to do." Kaela smiled politely, concealing the turmoil churning inside her. She had to remain focused, to remember her mission. Yet, the way he looked at her, with a mix of intrigue and challenge, made her heart pound in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. As the evening progressed and the gala unfolded, Kaela found herself swept into conversations with influential figures of the Empire. She played her part flawlessly, laughing at the right moments and nodding in agreement when necessary. Yet, her mind was racing, constantly searching for any mention of the Void Eraser or any hint of the Zynari's military strategies. While mingling by the grand buffet table, she overheard a pair of officers discussing a recent test of a new weapon. "The results were promising," one of them said, his voice low. "The Void Eraser is expected to be operational within the month." Kaela's heart raced as she leaned in, pretending to admire a particularly ornate dish. "What exactly does it do?" she asked innocently, feigning interest. The officers exchanged glances, surprised that a noblewoman would inquire about such matters. "It's designed to obliterate enemy targets from orbit," the second officer explained, his pride evident. "One shot and entire cities could vanish. It changes everything." Kaela swallowed hard, the implications of their words crashing over her like a tidal wave. This was the information she needed, but it came with a heavy weight. The potential for devastation was immense, and in the wrong hands, it could spell disaster for countless innocent lives across the galaxy. "Impressive," she managed to say, forcing a smile as the officers continued to boast about their project. "I'm sure the Empire will be unstoppable with such technology." As the conversation continued, Kaela's mind raced. She needed to document this information, to find a way to report it back to Galactic Intelligence. But standing here, surrounded by potential enemies, was fraught with danger. She had to be careful. One misstep could lead to her exposure. Just then, Zephyr reappeared at her side, his presence both welcome and disconcerting. "I see you've been engaging with the officers," he noted, his voice smooth as silk. "What do you think of their latest project?" Kaela turned to him, masking her surprise. "They seem confident in its capabilities." "It sounds extraordinary, though I can't imagine the ethical implications," she replied, testing the waters. Zephyr chuckled softly, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. "Ethics are often a luxury in power dynamics, my dear. The strong will always find a way to justify their actions." Kaela met his gaze, feeling the weight of his words. She could sense the darkness lurking beneath his charming facade. "And you? How do you justify your decisions?" she challenged lightly, intrigued by the complexity of the man before her. He leaned in slightly, his expression shifting to something more serious. "I do what is necessary to protect my people and ensure the Empire's dominance. Sacrifices must be made, even if the cost is high." They stood in silence for a moment, the tension between them palpable. Kaela's heart raced as she grappled with her growing feelings for Zephyr. He was a man of power, a leader who could either help or hinder her mission. Yet, she found herself drawn to him in ways she hadn't anticipated. Later that evening, as the gala began to wind down, Kaela found herself in a quiet corner of the hall, her mind racing with the information she had gathered. Just as she took a moment to catch her breath, Zephyr approached her again, a glimmer of mischief in his eyes. "Care for a walk in the gardens, Lady Kaela?" he asked, extending his arm towards her. "I promise I won't bite." She hesitated for the briefest moment, then took his arm, feeling a strange mix of excitement and apprehension as he led her outside. The gardens were a breathtaking sight, illuminated by soft, ethereal lights that twinkled like stars against the darkening sky. As they strolled along the path, Kaela felt a magnetic pull toward him. They spoke of trivial matters at first, but soon the conversation turned more intimate. "You intrigue me," Zephyr admitted, his gaze fixed on her. "You're not like the others. There's a fire in you." Kaela felt her cheeks flush, unsure of how to respond. "And you, Zephyr, are more than just a leader. There's a depth to you that I find fascinating," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. He stopped walking, turning to face her fully, his intensity almost overwhelming. "What do you fear, Kaela? What holds you back?" The question hung in the air. Kaela had faced countless dangers, yet here, standing before the man she was supposed to manipulate, she felt vulnerable. "I fear losing myself in this world of deception," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I fear becoming what I pretend to be." Zephyr stepped closer, his presence enveloping her. "You're not alone in this. We all wear masks, but perhaps we could find a way to be ourselves together," he suggested, his eyes searching hers. The warmth of his breath on her skin sent a thrill through her, and for a moment, the weight of her mission faded into the background. Kaela's heart raced as she felt the undeniable chemistry between them, a bond forged in the fires of danger and intrigue. But as his hand brushed against hers, she was reminded of her purpose. She couldn't afford to be swept away by emotion, not now, not when the fate of so many lay in her hands. With a heavy heart, Kaela took a step back, breaking the spell. "We should return," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "There's much to consider." As they made their way back to the gala, Kaela couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the precipice of something monumental. The lines between her mission and her heart were blurring, and the stakes had never felt higher. Kaela stood in the shadowy corner of the opulent chamber, her heart racing as she surveyed the room filled with Zynari dignitaries and operatives. The air was thick with tension, a palpable sense of danger that echoed her own inner turmoil. She had learned of a faction within the Zynari Empire, one that sought to dethrone Zephyr, and now she had to decide how to exploit this opportunity. Her mission was clear, but the emotional stakes had grown alarmingly high. As she adjusted the collar of her dark gown, meticulously designed to enhance her allure while maintaining an air of authority, a soft voice broke her contemplation. "You look as though you're preparing for battle, Agent Kaela." She turned to face a figure stepping out of the shadows, a tall Zynari man with slicked-back silver hair and piercing violet eyes, Verek, one of the faction leaders. His presence was both magnetic and unsettling. "I hope you're not here to lecture me on the importance of decorum," she replied, trying to inject some levity into the tension. Verek chuckled, a low sound that sent a shiver down her spine. "No, but I am curious if you're truly committed to our cause. Zephyr's rule is a threat to our ambitions, and we need allies who aren't afraid to make sacrifices." Kaela's pulse quickened. "And what sacrifices are you proposing?" "Information," he said, stepping closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You have access to Zephyr. What can you tell us about his plans? What can you give us that would ensure our victory?" She weighed her options carefully. The faction's motives were questionable, but if she could gather information on the Void Eraser, she might be able to manipulate the situation to her advantage. "I can provide you with insights into his strategic movements. But in exchange, I need the plans for the Void Eraser." Verek raised an eyebrow, intrigued but cautious. "That's a tall order. If what you're asking for is as dangerous as it sounds, you'll need to prove you're more than just a pretty face in Zephyr's bed." Kaela stiffened at his insinuation but quickly masked her irritation. "I assure you, I'm far more than that. If you want proof, I can arrange a meeting with Zephyr. I just need you to be prepared to act when the time comes." "Very well," Verek replied, a smirk playing on his lips. "I'll gather our allies. But remember, this is a dangerous game we're playing. If you betray us—" "If I betray you, I won't live to tell the tale," Kaela interrupted, her voice steady, though her insides churned with anxiety. With a nod of agreement, Verek stepped back into the shadows, leaving her alone in the dimly lit chamber. Kaela took a deep breath, her mind racing. She had just made a deal with the devil, but the potential rewards outweighed the risks. The idea of obtaining the Void Eraser plans thrilled her, yet the thought of Zephyr's reaction haunted her. Would he see her as a traitor, or would he understand her motives? Later that evening, Kaela found herself seated in Zephyr's private study, the room adorned with sleek, high-tech furnishings that reflected the Empire's advanced civilization. The flickering lights from the holographic displays cast an ethereal glow around them. Zephyr leaned against his desk, arms crossed, his expression one of playful confidence. "Tell me, Kaela, what's weighing on your mind?" he asked, his voice smooth and inviting. She hesitated, the weight of her secret pressing down on her. "I've been thinking about the faction. They seem restless, and I fear they could pose a threat to you." Zephyr's interest piqued, his eyes narrowing. "You've been mingling with them, haven't you? What do they want?" Kaela's heart raced as she chose her words carefully. "They want power, Zephyr. They believe your leadership is too restrictive and that they could bring about a new era for the Empire. They've reached out to me, hoping I could assist them." A flicker of amusement crossed Zephyr's face. "And what do you plan to do about it?" She met his gaze, determined to maintain an air of confidence. "I intend to gather more information. If we understand their plans, we can counter them before they become a real threat." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "You're playing a dangerous game, Kaela, but I admire your tenacity. Promise me you'll be careful. I can't afford to lose you to their machinations." Kaela felt a twinge of guilt at the sincerity in his voice. "I promise," she said, though the weight of her deception loomed heavy in the air between them. As she left his study, Kaela's thoughts spiraled. She couldn't deny the growing connection she felt with Zephyr, yet her mission loomed over her like a dark cloud. Was it possible to navigate this path without losing herself in the process? The following night, Kaela met with Varek and the faction leaders in a secluded area beneath the sprawling Zynari capital. The room was dimly lit, illuminated only by the soft glow of holographic displays that projected images of the Empire's territories. Tension hung in the air as the leaders exchanged wary glances, their distrust palpable. "Welcome, Kaela," Varek greeted her, gesturing for her to sit. "I trust you have news?" "I do," she replied, taking her place at the table. "Zephyr is becoming increasingly aware of your plans. He's suspicious of anyone who questions his authority." A murmur of concern rippled through the group. "What do you suggest we do?" one of the leaders asked, his voice tinged with urgency. Kaela leaned forward, her mind racing. "We need to act decisively. If we can undermine his support and expose his weaknesses, we can rally the Empire behind our cause. I can help orchestrate a campaign against him, but I need your assurances that you'll provide the plans for the Void Eraser." The room fell silent, the leaders exchanging glances. Finally, Varek spoke, his tone serious. "You're asking us to trust you with our lives. How can we be certain you're not leading us into a trap?" Kaela felt the weight of their scrutiny, but she held her ground. "I'm risking everything for this. Zephyr cares for me, and that's why I have access to him. If you want to overthrow him, you need someone on the inside. I'm offering you that opportunity." The leaders whispered among themselves, and Kaela's heart raced as she awaited their decision. Would they accept her offer, or would they see her as yet another pawn in their game of power? Finally, Varek turned back to her, a calculating glint in his eyes. "We'll consider your proposal, but know this. If we find out you're playing both sides, the consequences will be severe." Kaela nodded, feeling the weight of their threats settle over her. "I understand." As she left the meeting, Kaela couldn't shake the feeling that she was caught in a web of intrigue and betrayal. The lines between friend and foe blurred, and with every step she took, the stakes grew higher. The thrill of espionage coursed through her veins, but so did the fear of losing everything she had come to care for, especially Zephyr. Just as Kaela was about to step into the safety of her quarters, a familiar voice stopped her in her tracks. "Kaela!" She turned to find Zephyr striding toward her, his expression a mixture of concern and determination. "I need to speak with you." "What is it?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I've received some troubling reports about the faction. They're planning something big, and I fear it involves you," he said, his brow furrowing. Kaela's heart raced. The deception she had woven with the faction threatened to unravel before her eyes. "I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been playing both sides? That I can't trust you." Zephyr's voice was low but filled with intensity. She took a step back, her mind whirling. "Zephyr, please, it's not what you think. I'm trying to protect you. By conspiring with those who want to overthrow me," he shot back, his frustration palpable. "You need to choose. Kaela, are you with me, or are you against me?" In that moment, The room felt like it was closing in on her. The tension between them crackled like static electricity, and Kaela realized that the truth was slipping through her fingers. As she grappled with her feelings and her mission, she knew she was standing at a precipice. The choices she made now would determine not just her fate, but that of the entire galaxy. Kaela stood in the opulent chamber, her heart pounding beneath her chest. The vast windows offered a panoramic view of the Zynari capital, a sprawling metropolis of shimmering spires and floating transport vessels. She gazed out, momentarily lost in the beauty of the city, but the tension in the room snapped her back to reality. Zephyr's piercing gaze was locked on her, a mix of revelation and challenge swirling in his deep blue eyes. "I know who you are, Kaela," he said, his voice low and steady, reverberating through the silence that enveloped them. "You are not just a spy. You are a tool, a means to an end. And I have been using you just as you have been using me." Kaela felt the air thicken around her, her mind racing to grasp the implications of his words. "What do you mean?" she managed to say, her voice betraying the tremor of uncertainty that coursed through her. "You've known from the start?" He stepped closer, his presence commanding yet unnervingly intimate. "From the moment you entered my gala, I sensed your intentions. You think you're the only one who can play the game of espionage? I've been watching you, Kaela. I've been waiting for you to make your move. Why didn't you confront me before?" she shot back, her instincts flaring. "Why play along? Was it all just a game to you?" "It was not just a game," he replied, his expression softening for an instant. "I needed to eliminate the faction conspiring against me. You provided the perfect distraction, a means to draw them out of the shadows." Kaela's heart sank. She had entered this world with a singular mission, to gather intel and dismantle the Zynari Empire's weaponry. But now, she was merely a pawn in a larger scheme. "And what do you want from me now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've exposed me. Why not just dispose of me?" Zephyr studied her, a flicker of something unreadable passing across his face. "Because, despite everything, I believe you can be more than a spy. You can be an ally, if you choose to accept it." The weight of his proposition hung heavy in the air. Kaela's thoughts spiraled as she considered the implications. To join forces with the very man she had set out to betray? Yet, beneath the layers of deception, she felt a pull, an undeniable chemistry that had ignited between them since their first encounter. "What do you propose?" she asked cautiously, her mind racing. "How do we deal with this faction?" He stepped back to reveal a holographic display, projecting the layout of the faction's stronghold, a labyrinth of corridors and hidden passages deep within the city's underbelly. "We will need a plan. They are powerful and ruthless. Your skills in infiltration will be crucial. Together, we can dismantle them from within." Kaela felt the adrenaline surge through her veins. The decision weighed heavily, but she was no stranger to risk. "If we do this, you need to trust me fully. I won't play a supporting role. I won't be your puppet." Zephyr regarded her with admiration, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "I wouldn't dream of it, Kaela. We will be equals in this." As they began to strategize, Kaela's heart raced at the thought of aligning herself with Zephyr. Each moment spent with him deepened her feelings, complicating the mission that had initially seemed so clear-cut. The lines between duty and desire blurred, and she struggled to reconcile her growing affection for him with her original objective. "Let's move quickly," Zephyr urged, his voice steady as he pointed to a series of locations on the map. "The faction is planning an attack on my administration. We need to intercept them before they strike." Kaela nodded, her resolve strengthening. "What's our first step?" "We'll start by gathering intel from one of their insiders," he replied, his expression turning serious. "You'll need to use your charm to gain their trust. I will provide support from the shadows." "Support from the shadows?" she echoed, raising an eyebrow. "You mean you'll be watching me while I do the dangerous work?" He chuckled softly, the tension in the room easing momentarily. "You have a point, but it's essential for you to have an exit strategy. I can't afford to lose you." They finalized their plan, the gravity of their alliance settling in. Kaela's emotions churned. She felt exhilarated and terrified. This mission had taken a turn she had never anticipated, and with each passing moment, her loyalty was being tested. As they prepared to leave, Zephyr placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch sending a shiver down her spine. "Remember, Kaela, trust is a fragile thing. We need to be careful." "Careful isn't my style," she replied, a spark of defiance igniting within her. "But I'll play nice for now." The streets of the Zynari capital buzzed with activity as they emerged from the safety of Zephyr's chamber. The neon lights illuminated their path, casting a vibrant glow over the bustling crowds. Kaela maintained her composure, her spy instincts kicking in as she scanned their surroundings, always aware of the unseen threats that lurked in the shadows. "Stay close," Zephyr instructed, his voice low. "We can't afford to draw attention to ourselves." "Lead the way," she said, her heart racing not only from the thrill of the mission but also from the intoxicating presence of Zephyr beside her. They wove through the throngs of citizens, their laughter and chatter filling the air. Kaela felt a pang of longing. The normalcy of their surroundings contrasted sharply with the dangerous game they were playing. She glanced at Zephyr, who walked with an air of authority, his confidence palpable. There was something magnetic about him that made her question everything she thought she knew about loyalty and betrayal. They arrived at a dimly lit establishment, a tavern frequented by the faction's supporters. Kaela took a deep breath, steeling herself for the performance ahead. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, her pulse quickening. Zephyr nodded, determination etched on his face. "Just remember, play your part flawlessly. We need them to believe you're one of them." Kaela flashed him a confident smile, though inside, doubts crept in. "I've played roles before. This is just another act." As they entered the tavern, the atmosphere shifted. The air was thick with tension, and the low murmur of conversation ceased as eyes turned toward them. Kaela felt the weight of their scrutiny, and the adrenaline coursing through her veins intensified. "Stay close," Zephyr whispered, guiding her deeper into the establishment. They approached a table where a group of rough-looking individuals huddled, their expressions wary. "Do you want to do the talking, or should I?" Kaela asked, her voice low. "I'll introduce you," he replied, his demeanor shifting to one of authority. "But you'll need to take over quickly." As they reached the table, Zephyr's presence commanded respect. "I have someone who would like to join our cause," he announced, gesturing toward Kaela. The group exchanged glances, skepticism evident in their expressions. "And why should we trust her?" one of them sneered, crossing his arms defensively. "Because she has information that could turn the tide in our favor," Zephyr replied coolly. "You need to hear what she has to say." Kaela stepped forward, her heart racing. "I know where the Zynari are vulnerable," she said, projecting confidence. "And I can help you exploit that weakness." The leader of the group leaned forward, studying her intently. "Prove it. What do you know?" Kaela hesitated for a moment, weighing her options. But the thrill of the game surged through her, igniting her resolve. "I know about the Void Eraser. I can get you the plans." The table erupted into murmurs, the tension palpable. Kaela could see the wheels turning in their minds, weighing the risks against the potential reward. Zephyr remained silent, his eyes locked onto hers, encouraging her to continue. "But," she added, raising a finger, "you'll need to trust me completely. This isn't just a transaction. It's a partnership." The leader studied her for what felt like an eternity, and then, slowly, he nodded. "All right. We'll listen. But know this, if you betray us—" "I won't," Kaela interrupted, a fierce determination in her voice. "I'm in this for the same reason you are, to see Zephyr fall." With her words, she felt a shift in the atmosphere. The group leaned in, intrigued, and she could sense the tide beginning to turn in her favor. But even as she played her role, a nagging doubt lingered in the back of her mind. Was she truly prepared to betray Zephyr, or had her feelings for him clouded her judgment? As the conversation unfolded, Kaela navigated the delicate dance of deception, all the while acutely aware of the stakes. Her heart raced, torn between the thrill of the game and the reality of her growing attachment to the enigmatic leader beside her. The mission was no longer just about information. It was about survival, trust, and the complicated web of emotions that had ensnared them both. With every passing moment, Kaela realized the depth of her entanglement. The lines between ally and enemy blurred further, and as she engaged with the faction, she couldn't. The dimly lit chamber of the faction's stronghold buzzed with tension. Kaela and Zephyr crouched behind a tactical console, their breaths synchronized as they scanned the room filled with armed guards. The air was thick with the scent of machinery and the faint whir of surveillance drones hovering just beyond their line of sight. A flickering holomap projected the layout of the facility, revealing the location of Kaela's mentor, Davion, who was being held in a reinforced cell on the lower level. Kaela's pulse quickened as she thought of Davion. He had been her mentor, her guiding light through the murky depths of espionage. If the faction had captured him, they would possess not only her secrets but also the knowledge of her weaknesses. She turned to Zephyr, her expression a mix of determination and fear. "We have to get him out. He knows everything." Zephyr's sharp blue eyes reflected the flickering lights of the console. "I understand, but we need a plan. Charging in blindly could lead to both our captures. The faction is on high alert, and they'll be expecting us." Kaela felt the weight of his words, yet the urgency of her emotions clawed at her insides. "I can't leave him there. He's not just a mentor. He's family. If they have him, they'll use him against me." Zephyr placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, grounding her amidst the chaos. "Then let's use that to our advantage. If we can create a diversion, we can slip past the guards and get to him." "You know the layout better than anyone." Kaela nodded, steeling herself. The plan began to unfold in her mind, a tapestry woven with threads of deception and stealth. "I can hack into their security systems. If I can disable the cameras on the lower level, we'll have a clear path." "Good. I'll take care of the guards. Just get us that access," Zephyr replied, his voice steady and confident. He moved to the edge of their hiding spot, his presence radiating authority. "When you're ready, we'll execute this together." With a deep breath, Kaela focused her thoughts. She needed to channel her anxiety into action. She pulled out her portable interface device, fingers flying over the screen as she bypassed the locks on the security system. The familiar rush of adrenaline surged through her veins, igniting her senses. As the cameras blinked off one by one, a sense of victory washed over her. "Cameras are down," she whispered, glancing up at Zephyr, who was already moving towards the exit. "Let's go." They slipped through the door, hearts pounding as they entered the corridor. The dim lights cast long shadows, and the distant sounds of guards chatting echoed ominously. Kaela led the way, her instincts guiding her through the maze-like structure. "Stay low," Zephyr instructed, his voice barely above a whisper. They crouched behind a set of crates as two guards passed, their laughter ringing through the air like a cruel reminder of their precarious situation. "Did you hear about the new weapon?" one guard said, his voice laced with excitement. "They say it can wipe out entire planets. Just a flick of a switch." "Yeah, I heard it's called the Void Eraser." "Imagine the power," the other guard replied, awe evident in his tone. Kaela exchanged a glance with Zephyr, a silent understanding passing between them. The Void Eraser, it was more than just a weapon. It was the key to the Zynari Empire's dominance and the potential end of the fragile peace in the galaxy. This mission had become far more complicated than they had anticipated. Once the guards moved out of sight, they resumed their movements, Kaela's heart pounding with each footfall. They reached a heavy steel door marked with a security lock. "This is it," she whispered, her fingers trembling slightly as she prepared to hack the lock. "Hold on," Zephyr said, his voice low and cautious. "We need to be ready for anything." Kaela nodded, focusing on the task at hand. She plugged her device into the lock, her mind racing as she bypassed the security protocols. The door clicked ominously, and she pushed it open, her breath hitching as they stepped inside. The cell was dimly lit, the air stagnant and cold. And there, in the center of the room, stood Davion, his hands bound and his expression a mixture of relief and concern. "Kaela," he exclaimed, his voice hoarse but filled with warmth. "I was afraid I wouldn't see you again." "Davion!" Kaela rushed forward, her heart swelling at the sight of him. "I'm here to get you out. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, just a bit sore," he replied, glancing at Zephyr, who remained alert by the door. "But we need to hurry. They know you're here." Kaela quickly worked on the restraints binding him, her fingers deftly navigating the lock. "They have a security breach alarm. We need to move before." Before she could finish, the sound of alarm bells blared through the facility, echoing like a grim death knell. Kaela's stomach dropped. "We've been compromised. Let's move," Zephyr urged, his voice sharp and commanding. The urgency in his tone ignited her instincts, and she helped Davion to his feet, her heart racing. As they sprinted down the corridor, the sounds of footsteps and shouts filled the air behind them. Zephyr led the charge, his presence cutting through the chaos like a knife. "This way," he shouted, veering sharply to the left. Kaela followed closely, her thoughts racing. She could feel the weight of Davion's presence behind her, his resilience giving her strength. "Keep going," We'll find a way out, she called back to him, her voice steady despite the tumult around them. They reached a crossway just as a group of guards appeared at the end of the hall, weapons drawn and ready. Kaela's heart pounded as she searched for an escape route. We need to split up, she suggested, her mind racing. Davion, go with Zephyr. I'll create a distraction. Davion hesitated, concern etched across his face. No, Kaela. We can't leave you behind. Just go, she insisted, her voice firm. I'll be right behind you. Trust me. Zephyr exchanged a glance with her, understanding the weight of her words. We'll regroup outside, he promised, his eyes intense. Stay safe. With a nod, Kaela turned and dashed down a side corridor, her heart racing as she prepared to implement her plan. She could hear the guards shouting, their footsteps echoing closer. She reached for her device, activating a series of holographic decoys that flickered to life, drawing the guards' attention away from her true location. As the guards chased after the illusions, Kaela slipped through a maintenance hatch, her breath coming in quick bursts. She navigated the dark, cramped spaces, feeling the walls close in around her. But with each step, she felt the weight of her decisions pressing down. Moments later, she emerged into a dimly lit courtyard, the open air hitting her like a wave. She could see Zephyr and Davion at the far end, ducking behind a barricade. Kaela's heart soared, but it was short-lived as the alarms continued to blare, and the guards poured into the courtyard. Kaela! Davion shouted, spotting her. We need to move. Just as she began to run toward them, a guard spotted her. There she is, he yelled, raising his weapon. Kaela's instincts kicked in, and she dove behind a nearby crate, narrowly avoiding the blast. Adrenaline surged through her veins, fueling her determination. She couldn't let fear consume her. With a quick glance, she saw Zephyr drawing fire, his movements fluid and precise as he took out one guard after another. Go! Zephyr shouted, motioning for her to join them. I'll cover you. Kaela took a deep breath, her resolve solidifying. She sprinted toward them, dodging blasts and weaving through chaos. Just as she reached the cover of the barricade, a shot ricocheted off the metal beside her, sending sparks flying. Are you okay? Davion asked, concern etched on his face. I'm fine, she replied, though her heart raced. We need to get out of here. Now. Follow my lead, Zephyr instructed, his eyes scanning the area for an escape route. We'll head for the east exit. It should be less guarded. As they moved, Kaela felt the weight of her decisions pressing down on her. She was a spy, a master of deception, but every choice she made now seemed to ripple through her very identity. Would she continue to play this dangerous game, or was there a greater truth waiting for her just beyond this chaos? The trio dashed through the courtyard, the sounds of battle echoing behind them. Kaela fought to keep her mind focused, pushing aside the questions that loomed like shadows. All that mattered now was survival and the safety of those she cared about. But as they rounded a corner, Davion suddenly faltered, his breath hitching. Kaela, wait, he called out. What is it? Kaela turned, concern flooding her senses. I need to tell you something, he said, urgency etched in his voice. It's about who you are. There's something you don't know. The weight of his words hung in the air, and Kaela stood frozen, the revelation of her engineered existence crashing down upon her like a tidal wave. The sterile metallic scent of the Zynari stronghold mingled with the adrenaline still coursing through her veins from the recent escape. She turned to Zephyr, her heart pounding not just from the tense moments they had just endured, but from the crushing weight of her identity unraveling before her. Is it true? She whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and anger. Was I just a tool? A weapon crafted in a lab, meant to dance to someone else's tune? Zephyr stepped closer, eyes filled with an intensity that both soothed and unsettled her. Kaela, listen to me. You are more than what they made you. You've grown, evolved into something far beyond their original design. You have a soul, a purpose that is yours alone. Purpose? She scoffed, the bitter edge to her tone cutting through the air between them. I was bred for espionage, trained to deceive. What purpose could possibly belong to someone like me? I don't even know who I am anymore. Her voice cracked, the vulnerability stark against the backdrop of her spy persona. Who you are is not defined by your origins, Zephyr replied, his voice firm yet gentle. You've made choices, you've taken risks, and you've fought for what you believe in. That is what defines you. Kaela shook her head, grappling with the tumultuous whirlpool of emotions churning within her. What if I'm nothing more than a pawn in a game far larger than myself? What if all those choices were manipulated, orchestrated by others? She turned away, the raw ache of betrayal clawing at her heart. Zephyr reached out, his hand resting on her shoulder, grounding her. You've played the game, Kaela. You've outsmarted those who underestimated you. Don't let them take that away from you. His voice dropped to a whisper. I've seen the strength within you. It's why I chose to trust you. As if her internal storm sought an external catalyst, the calm was shattered by a shrill ping echoing from her comm device. Kaela's heart lurched as she snatched it from her belt. The screen flickered to life, displaying the emblem of the Galactic Intelligence Agency. She felt the air thicken with dread as she answered the transmission. Agent Kaela, the voice on the other end was cold and devoid of emotion. Your mission has been compromised. Intelligence suggests that your cover has been blown. A hit squad is being dispatched to eliminate you. You have less than a day to prepare. No, she breathed, feeling the walls of her reality closing in. They can't. They will, the voice interrupted. Your survival is not our priority. Complete the mission or face elimination. We're sending a tactical team to assist you in disposing of the Zynari threat. Kaela's grip tightened around the device, her knuckles whitening. What about Zephyr? Your objective is to secure the Void Eraser plans, the voice snapped. Personal attachments are secondary. Do not let your emotions cloud your judgment. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Kaela reeling. She looked up at Zephyr, who had been silently absorbing the exchange, his expression unreadable. They're sending a hit squad for you, he inquired, his voice steady as he searched her eyes for answers. Yes, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. They see me as a liability now. I'm at the end of my usefulness to them. Then we must act quickly, Zephyr said, a plan already formulating in his mind. We need to fortify this position and prepare for their arrival. If they think they can take you out that easily, they're gravely mistaken. Kaela shook her head, a sense of panic rising within her. I can't let you risk yourself because of me. You have your own agenda, your own battles to fight. I won't drag you down with me. Zephyr took a step closer, his eyes fierce. You are not a burden, Kaela. You are the most formidable ally I could have in this fight. We'll face them together. You don't have to do this alone. She looked up at him, a storm of emotion swirling as the weight of his words settled in her heart. But what if? No what ifs, he interrupted, his tone fierce yet tender. We fight. It's what we do. It's who we are. Before Kaela could respond, a sudden explosion rattled the stronghold, shaking the very foundation beneath them. The distant sounds of chaos erupted in the corridors, punctuated by the shouts of Zynari guards and the ominous whir of high-tech weaponry. Looks like they've arrived sooner than expected, Zephyr said, his eyes narrowing. We need to move now. Kaela's instincts kicked in, her training taking over as she assessed their surroundings. We can't engage them head-on. We need to find a way to outmaneuver them. Agreed, Zephyr replied. There's a maintenance tunnel that leads to the neighboring sector. It'll give us an advantage if we can reach it undetected. Lead the way, Kaela said, her resolve hardening. They slipped into the shadows, moving with a grace born of years of training, their hearts pounding in unison. As they navigated the dimly lit corridors, Kaela's mind raced. The fear of elimination loomed large, but it was the thought of betrayal that gnawed at her. Was Zephyr truly on her side, or was he merely playing a deeper game? Doubts flickered in her mind, but she pushed them aside. There was no room for uncertainty now. They reached the maintenance tunnel, a narrow passage dimly illuminated by flickering lights. Kaela glanced back at Zephyr, who was scanning the area for threats. What if the agency knew about your true allegiance? What if they sent you to keep tabs on me all along? Zephyr paused, his expression hardening. You think I would betray you? After everything we've been through? What choice do I have? She shot back, the tension between them palpable. I've been manipulated my entire life. How do I know you're not just another puppet master? Because I'm not, he said, his voice low but firm. I chose to trust you, Kaela. I chose to fight alongside you. You've become more than just a mission to me. Kaela's heart raced at the vulnerability in his admission, but the storm within her remained. And how do I know you won't turn against me the moment it suits you? Trust isn't built in a day, Kaela, Zephyr replied, his eyes piercing into hers. But I'm asking you to trust me now. We don't have time for doubt. Before Kaela could respond, a loud crash echoed from the entrance of the tunnel, followed by the sound of heavy boots rushing toward them. They're here, she gasped, adrenaline surging through her veins. We have to move. With a nod, Zephyr led the way into the dark tunnel, the sounds of chaos fading behind them as they pressed forward. The weight of betrayal and uncertainty hung heavy in the air, but Kaela knew one thing for certain. The fight for her identity, and the fate of the galaxy, was far from over. As they sprinted through the winding passage, Kaela couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the precipice of a revelation that could change everything. The stakes had never been higher, and the truth was yet to be fully unveiled.